Go ahead, Courtney, whenever you're ready.
Okay, perfect. It's giving me the option now. Alrighty. Can everyone see the slide? Can I get a thumbs up if you can see this first slide? Thumbs up. Perfect. Perfect. We have some thumbs up. Thank you so much for the introduction. Before we hop in, we have some cool, nifty new slides here at the NDTC. So we have QR codes now. So I want to give you all an opportunity, if you like, to scan this QR code with your cell phone. And when it opens up, you'll be able to set up an NDTC account so that you can have access to some of our resources and things like that. My name is Courtney Hodges Jones. I use she, her pronouns. I have been in fundraising for over a decade at this point. I started off at the Florida Democratic Party in 2012, where I worked in compliance and then moved to DC, like we all did at one point, I feel like, because I just needed to get out of Florida. And so I worked in compliance for a while and then moved on to fundraising. The majority of my fundraising has been in congressional campaigns. I've also worked in local county races, city council, state races as well. But the bulk of my fundraising is focused on congressional campaigns. Now I serve as a major gift officer at at the ACLU of Florida. Um, but I spent a lot of time in the Midwest when I worked for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC. I want to move away as well from just using acronyms, so I want to spell that out. So I worked for the D-Trip in 2020 and 2022 cycles where I worked with candidates who were launching their campaigns. So this topic is near and dear to me because I think it's so important to have these trainings accessible for folks that are launching their campaigns. This is some bold work that you're all doing, even if you're not a candidate. I saw some folks that are campaign staff, so that's amazing as well. So having these trainings accessible is amazing. So I'm happy to be here with you all today as we hop into building your initial donor list. I'll be popping in and out of the chat today with some links that might be helpful for you all. But at the end of the training, there'll be another QR code if you didn't get that first one, so that you will be able to scan and have access to all of this information as well. So real quick, we're gonna hop in the chat. I want to make sure our time together today is interactive. I don't want to just be talking at you. I want you to be able to come into the conversation as well. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. If we have some time, I would love for you all to come off mute if you're okay with that and if that's possible. If you have questions, feel free to do so, especially if it's a longer question that might be too much to type. We'll make some time and space for that as well. So I know we already talked about where you're joining from today, but if you didn't have an opportunity to pop that in the chat, feel free to do so now. I'm calling in from Central Florida, as I mentioned. I'm living about 30 minutes north of Mickey Mouse here in Volusia County, but I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, where I was born and raised. So if you didn't have an opportunity earlier, I would love for you to pop in the chat and tell us where you're joining from today. Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Perfect. So to hop into some of our objectives for today, we're going to describe the process for building a starter list of prospective campaign donors. We're going to discuss ways to manage and segment those initial donor lists. And then lastly, we're going to offer suggestions for making effective hard ask to your donors. Ooh, Greensboro. You're going to see me looking kind of all over the place. I have a bunch of stuff on my screen. So I might be looking over here. I might be looking here, but I'm engaging with you all. But right now I'm looking at the chat. Thank you so much for popping in there. My sister went to A&T, so I've been to Greensboro a few times. We love North Carolina. So, before we move on, I want to talk about some of our norms for our time together today. First, I want to be respectful. A lot of folks are coming to this conversation maybe at different points in their campaign, so there might be questions you might know the answers for that others might not. So we want to be respectful of the questions that people are asking. I love to say, what's said here stays here and what's learned here leaves here. So we want to make sure that we're not taking information from here and just, using it all over the place, but actually taking the valuable information that we learned and applying it to our campaigns. We want to be present for this conversation. I went ahead and muted my notifications for the next hour. I invite you to do the same so that we can be locked in with one another during the training. And again, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Want to make sure you're participating, want to make sure you're a part of the conversation. And so if we have time during discussion breaks, feel free to come off mute as well. And if you want to do so, maybe raise your hand. If I don't see you, maybe Christy will see you and we can acknowledge your question that way. So perfect. Real quick question before we hop in. Have you ever given money to a candidate or a cause you care about? And if so, what motivated you to give? Has anyone ever donated to a campaign? Yes. Okay, awesome. Anyone else? Has anybody, even if you haven't given, has anyone ever made a hard ask to you to give to their campaign? Have you ever been asked for money? Yes. Okay, perfect, perfect. Awesome. Thank you guys for participating in the chat with me. Perfect. So how do we get started? Let's jump into that. How do we get started with building our donor list? So Rolodexing, you may or may not have heard this term before. But in order to effectively make ask for money, you'll need to identify the people that we're going to be asking in the first place. And this is a term that we use a lot in campaigns, Rolodexing. It's the process by which we compile lists of prospective donors and organize those lists in a way that makes it easy and efficient, big word here, efficient, to make those asks and reach out to people. Some of us may be showing our age, but I want to talk about what Rolodex is and where it comes from. So for folks that may not know, it's a term that we use in campaigns that actually comes from a digital, before we've had cell phones, folks had little Rolodexes on their desk where you kind of can flip through like this and where they kept all the important information to get in contact with folks. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to build out our list of contacts in an efficient way so that we can roll through and start asking for money. So there's three parts to this process. So first, we want to import contacts from into one central place. That could be a Google Doc, that can be a spreadsheet on your computer, but we want to have all the information in one place. Then we want to remove duplicates. I don't know if you've ever exported your cell phone. I've done it for myself. I've done it for a bunch of candidates at this point, and for whatever reason, there are so many duplicates all the time. So we want to make sure we go through and clean up those lists and get those duplicates out of the way. And then we want to organize those lists. And we want to make sure that this is not a one-time process, right? We want to regularly be updating this list as we get more updated information for folks. And in a minute here, we'll discuss the basic information that we need for those lists. So when you're ready to start asking for money, uh, we want to make sure that we're dumping all of our phone contacts into a spreadsheet. And if you don't, I don't have an Android. I'm an iPhone person, but there is a way for both. If you Google it, YouTube it, there is a way to easily pull your contacts out of your phone and dump them into a spreadsheet. So that's the first thing we want to do. Get those phone numbers into a spreadsheet. And once we do that, then we want to go through any address books we might have. And people laugh when I say that, but I work with a candidate in Michigan. He was an older guy, gentleman, and he actually had paper. All of his contacts were written on paper, and we had to go through each of those and add them to a spreadsheet. So do not forget about those address books. Also, any of your social media accounts, Facebook is really good. Folks have a lot of friends and families that are on their Facebook accounts. We want to get those folks put into the list. And any kind of organizations that you might be a part of, church, alumni groups. Oh, hi, Kat. Alumni groups, anything like that. PTA groups are a good one as well. Sports affiliations. Think really holistically. Think about all the things that you do, people that you come in contact with, and want to get them all into one central list. I'm gonna drop real quick right here, and I hope this works. A resource that we have here in DTC. One second, let me see if I can get this to work. And if I can't get this link in here, then we'll make sure that you all have it. There we go. Perfect. Um, Here's some a resource as well that you can reference for if you're working on populating the initial list. You can review this course as well, and it'll have some good resources in there for you. So here's an example of a table that you would use, and this is something that you can put, like I said, into a Google Sheet. It doesn't have to be any fancy software. It can be a Google Doc or just a simple spreadsheet. You want to make sure that you're getting this starting point of the information: name, address, phone number, email. Employer occupation is really important, especially when it comes to reporting that you might have to do later, but also it could help with the conversation. And we'll talk about that more later too, like how to shape the conversation for the ask. So knowing where the person work or what industry they're part of, it's helpful. So we want to organize our list with this information, and then we'll get into a little bit here and what this grading system is, the grades A and F and 1 through 5. We'll go a little bit deeper into that here in a second. But this is the initial spreadsheet that you're going to want to build out for that information that we're going to pull out of our phones and out of our Facebook and things like that. So this is how you want to shape that information. Thank you so much. We'll include these links for you guys later as well. So let's take a quick pause right here for questions. Anybody has any, at this point, any questions that I can answer? Feel free to pop them in the chat if you have them. Nope, all good. So can I get a thumbs up? I want to make sure. I know you don't have questions, but thumbs up if everything so far is good. Thumbs down if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about. So far, so good. No questions? Okay, we're gonna move on. So what do we do with this information? Now we have everybody pulled into a spreadsheet. So now what? What's next? So once we've cleaned up our list and we're confident that there are no duplicates, we're confident that everyone has a real name. We don't want to go through our list and it says baby brother. That's my brother's name in my phone. So I want to make sure I add his real name on the list so that when we're going through, we can move through efficiently and effectively. Uh, in this process, is we don't want to rush. So this is something with candidates that I always say: have a campaign manager, have a finance director, um, have someone doing this with you, because I think when folks do it by themselves, they kind of rush through it a little bit or aren't pressured to really give it critical thought, I think. So this is not something that you want to do alone. It'll be really helpful to have a campaign, either volunteer or manager with you. So what are we doing? So in handling this process, we have 2 steps. We want to give folks what's their likelihood to give and how much do we think they will give. So in A, if you look here, in A is for someone who will absolutely write you a check. Like no questions asked. As soon as you call, they're giving you a check. So I always use the example, my mom and my dad, A's. That's gonna happen. They're gonna give me some money. And then we have our B tier people that they might give. We don't really know. Not 100% certain. And then we have our C tier folks that are, it's a possibility, but we're unsure. I always say that's my brother. It depends on what kind of day he's having. He might give me some money, he might not, right? And then we have our D and our F folks. We want to, this is like, these people are not going to give to us, right? This might be someone you ghosted a few years ago, but their number is still on your phone, but they're not giving to you as far as you think. We want to make sure that we are not just throwing out F's around, because we want to really work through our list and say, if I call, they might give that person might give me some money. So we want to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to donate. But there are some folks where you're like never gonna happen. So that's when we're gonna give them an F. And so once we have our likelihood to give, we want to break out what are these folks' donation ranges? So the numbers that I have here are just the illustration. Every campaign, the tiers are going to look different, right? So if you're doing a congressional campaign, those ranges are going to be a lot higher than what you might need to raise for a local race. So that's just a illustration, but the ranking system is generally the same, right? So the zero is you have no idea. I just have no idea what that person would give me. I couldn't even tell you. Um, then you have a one. Those will be your higher donation ranges. And then you work your way down. So you'll break out the rest of the tiers as illustrated here. And you want to make sure that you are laying out your tiers before you start assigning your numbers, 0 through 5, so that when we start making phone calls, your lists are organized. It's like, okay, these are my folks that will give 100% going to give to me and going to give me the highest amount. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So we want to make sure that we're standardizing our ranges and our tiers so that when we're grading folks, we can go back to that information as we're calling our donors. This is probably after we do our tiers. So we already know and we've already assessed the likelihood to give and folks' capacity to give, right? What else do we need to know? We need some history. We need some donor research before we just hop into calling. Because what are we calling about? How do we know what to actually ask them for? So giving history is really, really important. Um, who have these people given to in the past, right? That's something we might want to know. There are great websites that make it easy to find out this information, like Open Secrets and the FEC, which is the Federal Election Commission. Those are places you can go to find out a little bit more about the donor. But I want to put this is my like alert signal, alert. This is me talking in big bold letters. It is illegal to go to the FEC's website, the Federal Election Commission website, to find new donors. You cannot do that. You can't go on the FEC website and say, well, let me see who gave to Nancy Pelosi, and I'm going to call everyone on her donor list. That's illegal. I don't know what will happen because I'm not an attorney, but I just know you can't do that. But what you absolutely can do if you have someone on your list, like again, my brother, I can go online to the FEC or to Open Secrets to see who he's given to in the past. If he's given to someone, I can see, oh, he gave Nancy Pelosi $2,000. Then maybe I can ask my brother for $2,000 as well. Maybe he'll give it to me too. So you want to use those resources as a reference, not a starting point. And so after we have some of that initial information, what have they given, who have they given to, and what have they given them? We might want to find some motivational research, right? Some biographical research as well. So what are we going to be looking for? We want to look for who they work for. We might find some bios on their employer's website, which might give you some good information about how to start a conversation with them. You might find some stuff on their social media. Facebook and LinkedIn are good resources for this as well. They might post about stuff that's important to them. They might post about local issues that they really care about, and that could be a good starting point for the conversation as well. I don't know if TikTok or Instagram is useful, but you might check out some of their information there as well. So just do a little bit of digging before we start calling. And as on our the table that we I showed you a little bit earlier, after the grading scale, there's a note section. So you want to just jot down some quick notes. You might have a link, like I said, to their bio or things like that that you can reference once we start making these phone calls. So just a quick refresh on the donor information that we want to make sure we're gathering. You want to get their phone numbers. If you can find more than one phone number, that is awesome. You want to make sure you have all those listed because you might run into a situation where you get a house phone number and they don't answer. So maybe you'll try their cell phone numbers. Um, it's always good to have more than one. And then email, same thing. Email is great because not many people answer the phone nowadays. We have a lot of people that are screen phone calls. They haven't seen your number before, so you can shoot them a quick email. And like I said, if they have more than one, that's always good to have both on hand. City and state might also be helpful. And I say this because people don't think about this as well. When you're making phone calls, I'm in Florida, so I want to get all my Florida people out the way first, and then I might do my California folks later in the day because I don't want to call them at 6 a.m. their time. So knowing where people live is also really good information to have. And like I said, that employer occupation information, it might help shape your conversation with them. It also might let you know how much money to ask for, right? If they're a big time doctor, we might ask them for a little bit more money. So having that information is always helpful. And then bio information. Ideally, you'll have 2 to 3 sentences in your notes, maybe if you have that much information on folks, that could serve as potential icebreakers for the conversation. And I would, when I'm working with my candidates, I'll call this part their call notes. Like these are just some quick notes that you know we want to go over before you hop on the phone with someone. This could be things like things that could affect their industry. If they're working for oil and gas. I don't know, just throwing something out there. You might want to jot down those notes so that your candidate or you, the candidate, can bring those things up. Or if you went to the same college, I know we have a lot of Aggies in the chat, Aggie Pride. That might be something you bring up on the call. I went to Florida A&M, so we can talk about football or something like that, like things like that. Or you can speak to their specific issues. And then community presence. For example, are they on any boards? Do they do anything with the PTA? Do they volunteer? Things like that. Past giving history is also something we talked about. You want to get that information. And last, we also want to talk about maybe gathering, it doesn't have to be a lot of information, but some quick notes on their spouse or partner that you might have. It's always good to have those notes. One, you could, say hi to them as well. You also want to make sure that person hasn't given to you recently, and then you're calling their partner and saying, hey, can you give me some more money? Right? You want to make sure you're spacing those calls out respectfully. But it's also good to know because I work with a lot of donors, the spouses both max out. That's good information to know. You might have some spouses that give one max out, which is for both of them, and then you have folks that have double max to you. So that's always good information to have a little bit of have some notes on the partner as well. So now what? So let's talk about this real quick. In addition to likelihood and capacity to give, you'll also want to consider their motivations. This is really important. Um, is the donor more interested in knowing that the candidate is going to win? Or are they more interested in their time with the candidate? I work with donors who will give to races that we don't know if we can flip them. So it's a race that we don't know if they can win, but the donors feel good about the candidate, even if there's not a likelihood that they might win, but they like that candidate. So they will give those dollars. So it's important to know the donor motivations as well. So this I always say this slide looks aggressive, but it actually makes sense once we get into it. And so now that we've populated and organized our list, we want to make a plan for that engagement, uh, and how we're going to start reaching out to folks. So this graphic actually just illustrates the information that we've already organized and how to make the choices about where we invest our time. All donors are important, whether they're giving you $50 or maxing out, right? But realistically, we don't have an infinite amount of time on campaigns, right? We have until election day. We have to raise money, we have to talk to volunteers, we have to do all these things. We have communications that we have to work on. We have to be in a million places at one time. So we just cannot talk to everyone. And so this is how we figure that out. What donors do we spend the most time on? And we want to spend our time with the folks who's going to give the most and the highest likelihood to give. And that's not to say we're not going to work with everyone, but this chart sort of puts that into perspective. And so if you see here, we'll break it down where, like I said, the top left, we're going to spend the most time with donors who can give the most and then work our way out. And I see some questions in the chat. I'm gonna run through this slide real quick, and then we're gonna hop into questions in 1 second here. And so how do we choose how we engage with donors? With an understanding of the donor's likelihood to give and what their motivations are, then we can choose the appropriate means of outreach to those donors. So lower dollar ask might be appropriate to just send a quick email. Send emails, those folks, can you give $10? Can you give $20? Quick and easy out the door, and those folks have a pretty high response rate. And then for your higher dollar folks, it might be more appropriate to engage in a one-on-one call, which I don't know if you've heard the term call time yet, but that's when you're in a room with a campaign person, manager, fundraiser, friend who is sitting there with you, calling each donor one by one. It's everybody's favorite time on a campaign. Um, and so with that, we spend time actually calling those donors and asking for those larger those larger dollars. And then you might do digital and mail as well. That's another form of communication where folks might solicit donations and social media. Folks put out videos all the time. We didn't have TikTok when I started, but I've found in the last couple of campaigns that people have been utilizing TikTok to drop their donation links, or Instagram or Facebook has been around, so those work as well. And then also events. Events are a really useful tool. As well, if you want to get some of those higher dollars or lower dollars, depending on what type of event it is, in the door as well. So I will take a pause here. I'm going to run through questions I see, and then Chrissy, if you want to hop in and let me know if I miss anything. But I see a question here from iPhone. Are there reasonably priced fundraising programs these days? I remember Planned Parenthood used the Razor's Edge. I always used in campaigns that I worked with, and I hope I'm answering this question correctly. I've always used Act Blue, um, but feel free to come off mute if I'm misunderstanding the question. Okay, perfect. Yes, I've used Act Blue for fundraising. And then Christy, if you want to hop in, maybe there are the other examples you all use at the party.
Um, I have been recommending Act Blue. It's what I used personally. The cost is 3% of the money raised, I think. So the good thing with that is that you don't have to pay a monthly subscription fee or anything. And Democrats are really used to using Act Blue. So for people who have given in the past, it's really like one click and the donation goes through. I think that Act Blue's reporting features for your campaign finance reports are strong. So I do like Act Blue. I had a job at one point where I was working with Run for Something and vetting candidates for potential endorsements. If a candidate was using Act Blue, it gave me a degree of confidence in the professionalism of their campaign. If a candidate said, donate to me on Venmo, that for me was like a flag that they might be adrift. My 2 cents.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially when you talk about reporting, be it to federal reporting or state reporting, we don't want to be asking for cash apps and Venmos. Um, that's a really good flag.
I'm sorry. Hey, I just wanted to interrupt a second. No, I'm Susan Smith. I'm the sixth district chair. And by the way, I know you like Greensboro, but I live in Kernersville. I'm right next to Greensboro. When I was asking about fundraising programs, I think what I was talking, I know one of my friends was a fundraiser for Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, where I served as a board member, and he used a program, like I said, I think it was called Razor's Edge. And basically, it helped him find the donors. And they had such a sophisticated way of doing it. He could tell you the number one zip code in South Carolina where the biggest donors are for Planned Parenthood, for example. And I thought that it was something that an organization or perhaps a candidate could tailor make. It was a pretty sophisticated way of finding the donors and then continuing to show them some love. That's what I meant. If there was anything like that, I'm not sure if Razor's Edge was the correct name for that, but I just remember it being very effective. And I just think that well, a lot of candidates are not going to be able to afford that kind of, I guess, comprehensive is the right word to say, program. I just wondered what was out there that you're aware of.
So I think I understand a better what you're talking about. I haven't used Razor's Edge. I used something that was similar for a large county commissioner race that was called Numero, Numero. That is a tool that helps you manage your call time. It does provide some of the research on potential donors so you can see, hey, I'm calling Courtney and I can see she donated 250 bucks to the Kamala Harris campaign. So you know what? I'm going to ask her for 250 bucks. I think maybe that's the kind of tool you're talking about. Those Numero, which I did use, was a little expensive-ish. The pricing is scaled based on kind of the size of your race, if I remember correctly, instead of being as a percent of the funds raised. For a 2025 municipal candidate, probably overkill, but if anybody is here because you're running for the General Assembly in 2026 or you're helping a candidate run for the General Assembly in 2026, that might be the circumstance in which I would consider a tool like Numero. I'm also a little curious about it for county parties. Um, if there are any county parties that have a really robust fundraising program or need to set one up, I'd be curious and willing to, help get you going if you were thinking about that. Is that more in line with what you were thinking, Ms. Smith?
It is, yeah. I just find if there are tools that make it easy for candidates or county parties, or in just as an FYI, district parties, because we don't have a lot of purview on this. If it, I'm all for making things easier for folks to connect with donors if it's possible and if it's reasonable.
That's right. Thank you so much. Any other questions before we hop into um, the fun stuff? Nope, we're good. Okay, perfect. Fun stuff. How to make a hard ask. So, all there are many fundraising systems you can leverage to solicit donations. We can send emails, text messages. There are many ways to ask for money. Um, an actual means by which you'll make the request for the money is referred to the hard ask. So you might hear that term flying around quite a bit. Did you make a hard ask? Did you make a hard ask? Did you specifically ask for what you were looking to gain? So what does that mean? The hard ask is an urgent and specific request for support to commit to a specific action. So that could be donating, volunteering, or voting. We're asking a very clear question, a very specific question for what we want the outcome to be. So we want to approach these asks with the reminder that this is a chance for the donor to be a part of something bigger than themselves by empowering and inspiring them to give, vote, or volunteer. So what am I talking about here? So an effective hard ask has a few essential features. It's specific. So you have to make sure that you're flawless and clear about how much you need, by when, why, and then how can they give? What are the means for them to give? Are they giving online? Are they giving on ActBlue? Are they sending in a check? We want to make sure that we're specific. But also make sure that we have a sense of urgency in our ask. We want to emphasize that campaigns are time bound. We don't have until the end of time in campaigns, right? We have until election day. So we want to make sure we're clear about that. And we want to make sure that we're asking and letting them know how their impact will help our campaign. And then we want to use credibility. We want to illustrate how your values are aligned with the donors. And we want to make sure that we're sharing with the donor our path to victory or why we're running for the position in the first place. And then we want to also, again, make sure that we're clear about the viability. Share the campaign success. Let them know the campaign wins and let them know your plan to win this thing. And so we want to make sure that we're spelling all that out clearly in the conversation when we're making our ask. So let's talk about the flow of the conversation real quick. So this is the general flow of a fundraising ask when delivered person to person via call time, like we talked about earlier, or in a face-to-face donor meeting, an in-person meeting. So first you want to do a greeting, make a connection, say hello. Then second, you want to bring in your credibility and viability. You want to tell the donor why you're running for this position, and then why you're the person that can win, who can deliver for the district. Why are you the one that they should give to? And then throughout the conversation, you want to make sure you're engaging. Let's remember that it's a conversation. So we want to give the donor some time to speak. We want to listen, pull them into the conversation, ask about them, have a real flow of a conversation. Um, then you want to make sure you're listening. A lot of times that we're so focused on getting to the ask that like donor candidates may miss the opportunity just to have a real genuine conversation because you're so locked in on I got to get to this ask. It can be a little bit anxious, right? So you want to make sure you're listening and speaking specific to the questions that they might be asking you. And then next, it's time to make the ask. Again, you want to be specific and urgent, and also making sure that we're communicating a deadline for the donation that we're asking for. And now the hardest part probably is stop talking. You want to ask for your donation, and then you want to literally stop, give it some time to breathe, and wait for the response. You don't want to respond for the donor and definitely don't want to say no for them. Give it space and let them tell you no. I say this to every candidate that I'm working with. Don't say no for them. And then if the donor does say no, which happens often, uh, they might say no to your first ask, but I always tell my candidates to have a second ask lined up. If your first ask is $500 and you're like, they might say no to that, go ahead and already think of what your second ask could potentially be. Well, if you can't give $500, could you give 250? Or, okay, you can't give $500. Would you be open to doing a recurring contribution of $100 a month for a few months? So think of things that you can ask that might not be that initial ask. And so once they respond, you negotiate. Then it's time to close the conversation. Get their credit card. If they say yes, you don't want to leave the conversation. Always offer opportunity to give over the phone. And last, but certainly not least, the most important is to say thank you. We always want to make sure we're thanking folks and following up directly with them. So now that we did a quick overview, we're going to go ahead and like really dig deep into breaking this down. What does this look like in an actual conversation? So we want to open this conversation up with an appropriate greeting. You can see here as we go through, you can read the conversation here on the screen as we walk through each step. So we want to say hi. Nice to hear from you. You want to call the donor by name. We want to make sure that we're not just saying, hey, donor, right? We're having a real conversation. Hi, Talia. How are you doing? And then, like we said, establish the credibility. What does this look like? Illustrated here, you'll see a single statement, but this could be an extended interaction. It won't be, a one-liner, right? This might be broken down into a deeper, a lengthy conversation about your credibility for the campaign. And then we want to make sure we're making a connection with the donor, engage them on something that matters to them, right? This is where the donor research really helps. We want to bring in some of that information that we learned during our research process, bring that into the conversation. Is their child going to school? Is there something that might be, people like to talk about themselves. So give the donor opportunity to do that as well. And then also in this part, they might say something that trigger something in you that you can remember about your campaign that you could bring into the conversation as well. And so, yeah, this is where we pause and listen to what our donors have to say because it will help you know how to build a further connection with them as well. And then where you could take the relationship past this conversation. So there might be something in here that they're saying. You might want to make a mental note so that you can jot it down later and put it in your donor note. So there's something that could come from this conversation that you could add to those notes that you could reference later. Because these aren't going to be one-time conversations. More often than not, you're going to be re-engaging these folks, and we want to make sure that we're really pulling them um, into the campaign and building lasting relationships. And so now we're here. We're ready to make the hard ask. Remember, is it specific with an amount? We don't want to say, can you give to the campaign? We want to be specific. Can you give me $500 today? Or could you give $500 by the end of the month before the reporting period? We want to make sure it's urgent. We want to give a deadline, and we're going to hope they say yes. We're going to assume they'll say yes. And then we wait. It's important not to move too fast through this process. You want to make it simple and direct. You want to make sure that the donor has time to think about it and consider. But even then, you don't want to say no for them. So even if it's taking a little bit of time, you want to let them speak, right? You don't want to just say, "Oh no, if that's too much, then we can go lower," right? Just give it some time to breathe. There are a few things that can happen in this conversation, right? They can say yes, that's great. They can say no, that happens. Um, but the good thing is we got the ask out. And so if it's someone who says no, but they can give later, like I said, make a note of that. We can come back to them later. If there's someone that says no, never call me again, I'm not giving to candidates, we want to respect that as well. And then we move on to the next ask. We shake it off and we move on. So here we go. So thank you for sharing. I also know how important this is. So would you give $100 this Friday and $100 next month if that works better for you? Well, okay, yes, that might work. So we get into the negotiating. We want to give, like we said, we want to give folks options if they can't give today, if they can't give that amount. We want to go ahead and give them some negotiating and some options to give. So we did it. We made the ask with the commitment made. We transitioned the process to the contribution. We want to make, we're asking for their credit cards. We want to go ahead and close the contribution out. We want to have, if they don't want to give with the credit card, there's also a way to give. You might have options for folks to mail in checks. People still love to mail in checks. So we want to make sure we have options for everyone to give. And again, like we talked about before, the most important part, we want to close out and say thank you. Really let these folks know that you appreciate their donation, their time, their resources that they're giving to the campaign. So we want to close with a sincere thank you. And after the call, you should always follow up with another written form of thank you. That could be an email, that could be a handwritten note, whatever works for the campaign. I love a handwritten thank you note. But you can't send those out all day. So some folks can, shoot them an email. Make sure you follow up after the call to say thank you again, either via email or by mail. So we're gonna play a little game. I want to know what you think. So I know it's a really hard time of the year and the economy could be better, but could you donate some money to my campaign? So I'll ask you all, is this an effective hard ask from everything we talked about today? Is this something, if I called you as a candidate and said, I know it's a really hard time of year and the economy could be better, but could you donate? No, absolutely not. It's not a hard ask. But my second question is, would you give me money if I called you and said this? Would you be willing to donate? And if anybody wants to come off mute real quick and let us know why. Either let us know why you wouldn't donate or why it's not an effective hard ask. Don't want to come off mute. Oh, here we go. Depends on the rest of the conversation. That's very true. That's very true. But it depends on the conversation. That's true. But we want to make sure that we're being clear and specific. And that's one of the things that we are not doing here. We're not specific. Can you give my campaign some money? What's some money? We want to make sure we spell it out for them. Exactly. Not a specific amount. Yep. Perfect. And Chris, you made a really good point. I've worked with a lot of candidates who have actually asked this way. And a lot of times it's for folks they know and they've already filled out the backstory in their mind for them. So I've had candidates say, well, their child is going off to school in a little bit, they're going to college and they might be dealing with some stuff, financial stuff. So they've already made up a scenario in their head, but these are people who care about us, right? This is our Rolodex. This is our sphere of influence. These people know us. And we don't want to make up scenarios for them, right? So if we ask them for 250, they might still give it to us, and we want to give them the opportunity to say no. What about this? I know we've talked a lot in the past about how important it is to keep your small business community thriving. So I'm asking for your support with my town council run. We need your help to hit our quarterly goal of $10,000. Can you help me? What about this? What about this ask? Are there ways we can make this is there ways we can improve this? Anybody want to hop in the chat or come off mute? How can we improve? This is a quality ask. But are there ways we can make it a little bit better? No specific amount, that's right. Still not specific. We gave a lot of information about what we're doing, but what are we asking them to do? Right? We want to spell it out. We want to make sure we're specific. There are a lot of great qualities to this, but it can be better. It can be better. Absolutely right. No specific time frame and still no specific ask. So, translating donor ask into emails. So that was a conversation that we're having. So call time ask will make up the majority of our donor outreach, right? We're going to spend a lot of time on the phones asking people for money one-on-one. Um, But many asks, especially the smaller dollar donations, can be delivered via communications like emails or even some text messages as well. Um, and so we'll talk about that real quick. We want to make sure you're including still a clear, hard ask in those text messages or emails. What are we asking people for, and when are we asking them to do it? Your first ask should be above the bar, meaning your reader shouldn't have to scroll down to see what you're asking. As soon as I open that thing, I need to know, can you give today? Can you give this amount? We need, people's attention spans are quite short. So we want to make sure we're getting to the ask fairly quickly. Um, Use any hyperlinks that makes it easy for them to just click on really quickly and go ahead and give. You want to make sure you're making it easy for folks in email and in text messages. And ensure that you provide other ways for folks to donate. So if they're sending in a check or even giving at a later date, you want to make sure you're giving them multiple opportunities to give and multiple ways to give. So here's a quick example of what I'm talking about here. Um, Doris Campaigns makes a clear, personalized, hard ask in a quick few sentences. They're asking Carol to make her first donation to help the campaign reach their goal of $75,000. The ask is above the bar, so that's the first thing that we see. Um, and the reader doesn't have to scroll to the bottom of the email to get to the question. And I'm pretty sure most of us have seen some emails like this before, even if you haven't. But this is a great illustration of how to do an ask via email. So, real quick, any questions before we close out? Do we have any questions? Anything that folks want to ask or that I could revisit or go over for you? I want to make sure that you leave here with questions answered as best we can. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Perfect. And I'll also have my email at the end of the slides. So if you have a question or Christy can reach out, or if you all want to email me directly, that can happen too. That's so funny. Chris said they learned a lot. Thank you. You're so welcome. But I would rather have dental work than ask someone for money. And that is how a lot of people feel. We talk about, especially in campaigns, raising money because it's a necessary evil. But it is really hard. It's really hard work to ask people to give their hard-earned money. To campaigns, but it's necessary and you're worth it. You got to tell yourself, I know I'm running for this position for a reason. I know I'm the candidate that can get the work done. And so I'm asking them to invest not only in me, but in the community and what you can bring to the community. So here are our key takeaways from today's conversation. Number one, regularly apply three-step Rolodexing process to populate and grow your donor list. You want to make sure we're importing, deduping, and organizing our list. Two, segment your list using giving capacity and likelihood to most efficiently choose how best to reach out to different prospective donors. Like how are these people going to give? And if they are going to give, how much? We need to know that before hopping into calling folks. And then once you've built and organized your list, begin targeted outreach with the goal of delivering hard asks to prospective donors. We have some courses and we will follow up with this information as well. Like I said before, the NDCC has so many courses, free courses for candidates to hop on and they're free. So if you have things that you want to specifically learn about, you can review this course or you can go online and see if there are any other courses that might be helpful to you or your candidate. And here are a few examples, and I put the links here in the chat as well, some of the courses that we have available to you all. And last but not least, here's our nifty QR code that we are now implementing in our trainings, which I love. If you want to go ahead and scan it, these are also some of our recommended courses as well. So many QR codes. Here's another one. Tell us what you think. You can scan this code as well. A notification will pop up and you can get engaged with us in that way. And real quick, we have 3 minutes. I want to make sure we get you all out of here in time. So I want to move on. There's a way to save the chat. If there was something in the chat that you want to save, here's an illustration for you to save that chat as well. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk with you all today about fundraising, my favorite part of campaign, something I love. Like I said, asking for money is really hard, but you all can do it. I believe in you. I'm going to drop my link here as well for you all to fill out my training survey. And Christy will follow up with you all in your other outreach. If you can't get this link now, it will be in some of your follow-up training documents as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Courtney. If you're okay with it, I will CC you on the
Yes.
post-training email. Although, actually, no, I don't have your email. Mm,
Courtney Hodges Jones at gmail.com.
okay. Um, and I will send that
Thank
follow-up
y'all.
email. Thank you so much for this training session. It's some really good practical tips. Um, I think that's it. I think we're good, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.